This is the story of a killer who moved into a family's home and made himself comfortable. Hinterkaifeck, 1922. The barn was dark. The lantern in the rafters had been turned out hours ago. Hay piled up in the loft above where a man had been waiting for a long time without moving. Outside, in the courtyard, snow muffled the sound of a boot on packed dirt. Then the rasp of a wooden door pulled open against its hinge. Then footsteps in the stable, slow, unhurried. The footsteps of a man on his own property, going to check on his cattle. In the loft, the man who had been waiting reached for something he had set down on the planks beside him. A Reuthuer, a heavy Bavarian mattock with a wide pickaxe blade and a wooden handle. A single screw protruding from the grip. Homemade, identifiable by anyone who had ever held it. The footsteps in the stable stopped. There was a doorway between the stable and the barn. A narrow doorway, wide enough for exactly one person. Andreas Gruber, 63 years old, the patriarch of the Hinterkaifeck farm, was standing on one side of it. He stepped through. 6 days earlier, on a quiet afternoon in late March of 1922, Andreas Gruber was walking back across his courtyard with a folded newspaper in his hand. It was a Munich daily. Nobody on his farm subscribed to it. Nobody in the village 600 meters down the road had ordered it. It had simply appeared on his property, in the dirt. The way things appear when someone brings them and doesn't announce themselves. He told his neighbours about the newspaper. He couldn't explain it. They told him to call the police. He didn't call the police. A few days after the newspaper, he found something else. Footprints in fresh snow, coming from the dark line of the Hexenholz, the witch's wood that pressed against the eastern edge of his property. The tracks led across the field, around the corner of the house, and stopped at the door of the machine room. The padlock there had been forced open. Andreas inspected the broken hasp. He told his neighbours about that too. Then he climbed the ladder to his own attic. The cold hay storage above the main house, dark, cramped, big enough to hide a person who didn't want to be found. He searched every corner. He found nothing. He came down the ladder. He went back to work. He didn't call the police. The reasons for that were his own. The footprints had gone in. They had not come back out. The maid before Maria, a woman named Crescens Rieger, had quit the year before. In a statement she gave 30 years later, in 1952, she explained why. Her bedroom door at the farm had begun opening at midnight. She never saw anyone, even though the door was locked. It happened almost every night at the same hour, until she gave her notice and left. She survived because she left. She told no one who could stop what was coming. The new maid arrived at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on March 31st. Maria Baumgartner, 44 years old, dropped off by her sister with a single carpet bag. She was given a small room off the main hall. Her bag was still half unpacked when the sun went down. By 6:30, the sky was black. The house was quiet. The cattle were settling. And in the loft above the barn, the man with the mattock had already been waiting for hours. He brought them through the narrow passage, one at a time. That was the architecture of the killing. That doorway between the stable and the barn, the doorway too narrow for two bodies abreast. They came through it the way you come into a darkened room, alone, blind, the eye still adjusting from the lit space behind you. Andreas went first, then his wife Cäzilia, 72, then his daughter Viktoria, 35. Olmüller's autopsy would later count 9 star-shaped wounds on her body, more strikes than any other adult, the record offering no explanation for the difference. Then Cäzilia Gabriel, the 7-year-old granddaughter. The killer, having finished in the barn, walked back across the courtyard to the house. Inside, in a wooden carriage, the 2-year-old grandson Josef was asleep. One blow to the head. Then he found Maria Baumgartner in her room, the half-unpacked bag still open on the floor beside her. The 7-year-old in the barn was the last to die. The autopsy estimated she had survived her wounds by 2 to 3 hours. In that time, in the dark, surrounded by the bodies of her grandfather, her grandmother, and her mother, she had pulled tufts of her own hair from her scalp. The hair was still clutched in her fists when she was found. No one was found for 4 days. Whoever had killed 6 people did not leave the farm. They stayed. The cattle were fed and watered. The smoked meat in the pantry had been cut fresh. Smoke kept rising from the chimney. A travelling mechanic named Albert Hoffner came on April 4th to fix a piece of equipment, found no one answering the door, and left. The 7-year-old's school marked her absent on April 1st, and again on April 3rd. Nobody went to check. Lorenz Schlittenbauer organised a group on the afternoon of April 4th. He was a neighbour. He had fathered Viktoria's son Josef 4 years earlier. Andreas had blocked their marriage. The paternity, in the years since, had been admitted and denied and admitted again. Schlittenbauer had remarried someone else 10 months before the murders. He arrived with 2 other men. The barn door was barred from the inside. They forced it open. Schlittenbauer found Andreas first, in the hay, and pulled him out. He found the elder Cäzilia. He moved her body. He found Maria Baumgartner with her backpack still beside her. Then he took a key from his pocket and unlocked the front door of the house. A key Andreas had reportedly told neighbours had gone missing, and walked in alone, ahead of his companions. "Where is my son, Josef?" he called out. The witnesses said he was unnervingly calm. By the time the lead investigator arrived from Munich, dozens of villagers had walked through the barn and the house. No fingerprints were taken. No diagrams of the bodies were made. Whatever the scene had to say when they forced that barn door, it had already stopped speaking. The investigation ran for 64 years. More than 100 suspects were named. Schlittenbauer was questioned at length and cleared twice. He died in 1941, a few hundred yards from the farm where 6 people had been killed. No physical evidence ever connected him to the murders. Crescens Rieger, in her 1952 statement, named 2 local men, the Bickler brothers. Her sister named them again, on her deathbed. The farm dog, she noted, did not bark at Anton Bickler. He had an alibi, was never charged. The murder weapon wasn't found until 1923, during the demolition of the farm. Buried in the hay of the same barn loft where the killer had waited, dried blood still on the blade. The lumber was sold. The land was cleared. After the autopsy, the physician removed the skulls of all 6 victims and sent them to Munich for examination. Not to a laboratory, to a clairvoyant. The clairvoyant produced nothing useful. The skulls were never returned. They were lost in the bombing of Munich during the Second World War. The 6 people buried in the churchyard at Weidhofen are buried without their heads. In 2007, 15 students at a Bavarian police academy reviewed every document from 64 years of investigation. All 15 of them agreed on a single prime suspect. They refused to publish the name out of consideration, they said, for his descendants, who were still living in the area. A small concrete marker stands in a field now, 70 kilometers north of Munich, where the farmhouse used to be. The field is flat and quiet. There is no building. There is no narrow passage between a stable and a barn. Just the marker and the ground beneath it, and the witch's wood still standing at the edge of the property, exactly where the footprints came from. Going in, none coming back. If this one got under your skin, subscribe. Conspiracy Comix cracks open a new mystery every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Don't read the next one alone.